If you've taken a witch's primer, there is an entire lesson on how to build a thought form. It's a basic lesson, but it's fairly thorough. If thought forms are a new concept to you, it is a decent introduction. Regardless of whether you intentionally build a thought form or not, it's important to recognize that everything that is in existence in our three-dimensional world is an expression of a thought form, the materialization of a thought form. You can get rid of all kinds of things in the world, and they'll pop up again in one form or another if the thought form back of them does not get destroyed. A lot of what we do in the craft is magic, and what magic really is either the creation of or the elimination of thought forms. But even those of us in the craft forget about that sometimes. We do get hypnotized by the world of form, and we do believe that our world has power over us, especially because our pain sensors in our body are really good at reminding us how, quote, real the world is. And the idea that there is a thought back of whatever it is that's causing us pain is something that in the throes of pain is not helpful. So it's important to recognize that sometimes in the midst of your day-to-day activities, you need to take an aspirin, or you need to go to the doctor. You need to get help to find something that will take care of the situation on a mundane basis so that you can get some relief from whatever this painful experience is, whether it's physical pain, emotional pain, whatever it is. Once you have some sense of relief in the physical world, then you get to work on changing the thought form. People that misunderstand and sometimes misuse the concept of how thought is creative and that everything in our physical world is an expression of a thought form give people the misunderstanding that they're not allowed to get their needs met in a mundane way, or that there's something wrong with them. For instance, back in the 80s, when this was really getting popular, this idea of thought is creative and your thoughts are the creation of your reality and you create your own reality and all of that. If you were to tell somebody that you were diagnosed with an illness, it was almost vogue to say, why did you do that to yourself? Why did you create that reality for yourself? That still happens to some degree, I've noticed, and it's not helpful. It is not helpful to do that. In fact, when people are in the throes of pain in this world, what they need is for us to pick up the slack for them. They're not capable in that moment of changing a thought form. So we have to give them the support. We have to help them until they can get to the other side of it. And then either they'll change the thought form or they won't. And ultimately, that's not our business. They have to learn at their own pace. But when somebody's in pain, you don't just lecture at them that it's all in their mind. That's not helpful. No, it's just a thought form, or you created that. Thought forms are not necessarily individually based. A lot of our thought forms are collective thought forms. And it's not so easy to just choose a new thought sometimes if you are caught up in mass thought forms. And that's what things like cults are built on, are mass thought forms. And because those mass thought forms are so challenging to overcome and to separate from, cult leaders lean into them and they rely on them to keep their members captive. And the way to help people out of cults is not to ridicule them or ask them, why don't you just have more willpower? It's to be compassionate with them. It's to listen to them. It's to let them come to the realization on their own. And when they do come to the realization on their own and they want to be released from this, but to ridicule them and to say, it serves you right, why'd you get involved with somebody like that? I was never a member of a cult, but I did get taken by a con artist for a couple years. I was the person least likely to be conned in my eyes and in many other people's eyes. And lo and behold, I was just as susceptible as many other people to this thought form that was introduced to me, and I got sucked into it. Luckily, I woke up and I got out of it. And luckily for me, I had people that were very compassionate to help me out on the other end. So when people are going through something, yes, it is in their mind. Yes, it is part of a thought form. All of that's true, but they don't need to be lectured when they're going through something. They need compassion. They need patience. They might need you to go grocery shopping for them or take care of their plants while they're recovering from whatever it is that is the result of this thought form that they are reaping the negative results of. It's a real test of who your friends are when you become victimized by something, some kind of thought form, either personal or collective. I had a business back in, I think it was the early 90s. It failed miserably. I lost everything. I lost all my money. I lost everything. Now, this wasn't because I was conned. This was bad decisions and things like that. Everybody involved in this business, we all lost it. We all lost everything. As a result, I didn't have any money. What do? You just go get a job, right? So I went and got a job at a coffee house. I had to have some kind of cash flow. So I started figuring out what's the next phase. And it was so interesting to watch how many people ridiculed me for losing my business. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Look, you're working at a coffee house and here you're supposed to be this big witch. And I thought to myself during that time, this is kind of good because it really does show me who's who and what's what in my life. I'm able to weed the garden a bit and start from scratch. Luckily for me, I had the wisdom to have some grace with the fact that a lot of people are awful. That's just how they are. But my point in all of that is that when people are being victimized by something that is either of their own making or participating in something that's negative for them, and you can predict that it's going to be a problem, you can see that they're not doing the right thing. You can see they're involved in something that's bad for them or bad for other people, and they're not listening, and then they do crash and burn. Remind yourself the compassionate thing is not to make fun of them, not to tell them, I told you so, or to recruit other friends and pointing the finger and ridiculing them. I know that when I was under the spell of this con person, I probably did some things that were awful. I remember a few, and I've apologized for those, but I'm sure there were things that I wasn't even aware of because I wasn't in my right mind. Sometimes when people are under the spell of a thought form, they do things and they say things and they react in ways that are out of character for them and that can be hurtful. And the most important thing for them is to get out from underneath that, and we can mend our friendship later. If I do care about you, if I do love you, my job is to make sure that you're okay and to give you whatever it is that you need to get on the other side of this thing. There's a lot of people in the world right now waking up from mass thought forms and recognizing that they were going down a wrong path and they didn't realize it. The worst thing to do for those people is to make fun of them, to rub their noses in it and say, I told you so. Because if you've never gone through that, if you've never gone through being snowed and duped and conned, you don't know what it's like. You don't understand what they're going through. And good for you that you've never had to go through that. But if you have gone through that, you know what I'm talking about. They're not in their right minds. Forgive them, for they know not what they do. Because those thought forms are huge. But the good news is that they are just thoughts, and thoughts can be changed. And the way you help people change their thinking is not by rubbing their noses in their mistakes. It's by offering them new models of behavior. And if you're compassionate and loving, kind and encouraging, and you model that kind of behavior, it's going to speed up their healing, because they are then going to be able to replace that old thought form with a new thought form. But if you're giving them a new thought form which is based on shame and cruelty, then why wouldn't they want to just stay where they are? At least it's a familiar evil thought form. Why would they want to eschew their evil thought form in exchange for your evil thought form? It's not going to work. But what you can do is model better behavior for them and love them anyway. That doesn't mean that they don't have to take accountability and all that stuff. I understand all of that. But there's a time and a place for everything. When people are waking up from being under the influence of thought forms that were more powerful than what they could handle at the time, they're scared because their entire reality is shattering in front of their face. Everything they thought they knew and that they could depend on isn't there. If you do encounter these people that are going through an awakening, the best thing you can do for them is to love them and to give them a safe harbor and know they have a home outside of whatever this was. And there's not just one of these things going on. They're all over the place. These thought forms are like parasites that grab onto groups of people. They're everywhere. But I've noticed lately a type of awakening that's been happening, and I just think it's barely starting. And I think you're going to see people's eyes opening, because the common wisdom right now is that everything's going to get worse from here on in. And I'm not a predictor. I don't do that. Even when I'm giving readings, I don't do predictions. But what I'm being shown is the exact opposite. I'm just going to tell you that. I'm being shown a way that things are going to get a lot better quickly as people understand the lies under which they have been living in this three-dimensional reality are shown to be what they are. And as we help them as they wake up, believe me, you're under your own weird thought form just by being in this world, by being under the thought form of the demiurge itself. You're going to be going through an awakening too, and you'll want the same kind of compassion for you that you're showing to others. As you start to awaken, you're going to want the same kind of help, gentleness, love, and compassion that these people need from you right now. Because if you're listening to this, you're in a position, I guarantee you, to be offering some great help to other people that are going through something very dark. And this mass awakening happens. The problem that I have with a lot of the Luciferian mythologies that are taught, it's as if we're supposed to believe that it's an external entity named Lucifer that's a certain personality and is separate and distinct from each of us. And that's not my understanding of who Lucifer is. Lucifer is the concept of light itself. And the idea of enlightenment, awakening, redemption, and correction of error is the whole concept behind it. And it's lather, rinse, repeat. Forgiveness, redemption, atonement, correction, over and over again. And no matter what you think you've done or what you think they've done or whatever it is, from the Luciferian perspective, all is well. Nobody really did anything. Everyone is truly forgiven. At the end of the storyline, where you realize all is well and nothing has been harmed. But in the middle of the story, in the middle of the illusion, underneath the throes of this demiurgic, illusory, three-dimensional reality that we're living in, there's all kinds of pain. There's all kinds of corruption. There's all kinds of greed and evil. And a lot of the evil comes from controlling the minds of people, building these thought forms that suck people into them and who don't know how to get out. But that Luciferian spirit is within each and every person and can overcome anything. And so as that spirit starts to rise and cause a bit of awakening, the ultimate good is that this individual will awaken and recognize the truth and will be free. But in the midst of the storyline, it's very scary for them. It's very scary. And so there's a lot of that is just starting to happen right now. And like I said, if you're listening to this, you're in a position that's very unique in that you're probably not under the same kind of spell these people are. And as they start to awaken from it, they'll need you. So please be compassionate. Please be loving. Please allow them to find some safe harbor in your heart so that they can awaken and that we can start to see this healing happening on more of a massive scale, which is destined to happen. And it's about whether we're willing to midwife that or not. Are we going to fold our arms and watch them writhe in pain? That serves you right. Or are we going to be the midwives of this birth of truth so that we can get where we all want to be more quickly? My understanding of the truth is that no one gets left behind. Nobody gets left behind. There is no such thing. The divine child of the infinite is complete. And if there's one little speck of that divine child still asleep, then there's more work to do. The idea that we are all one sounds like a platitude until you get it on a visceral level. And if it's true that we're all one, then regardless of what's going on in the storyline, if part of that oneness is in need of your help, even though in the story you seem to be on enemy sides of a situation or of a problem, that the awakening of the divine child takes precedence over that storyline. You know how they say politics makes strange bedfellows? It's really truth that makes strange bedfellows. Because when people start to truly wake up, they realize that some of the people they've always been taught to hate or have always been at odds with are just as beautiful and wonderful as everybody else. And there's a level at which we don't have those differences anymore. And if we can train our minds to see from that level where we don't have those kinds of differences anymore, then we save not only ourselves thousands of years, but we save our planet thousands of years and our humanity thousands of years. Because that one little act of compassion for your supposed enemy who's writhing in discomfort because they're awakening to the truth is enough to save a lot of people, because it spreads like wildfire. Remember that little grain of mustard? If you have the faith of a tiny grain of mustard, well, that grain of mustard is a wonderful symbol, because that little grain of mustard can create all kinds of mustard plants that go on and on and on and on and on. And it seems like this insignificant little grain. Or the tomato seed seems so insignificant when you look at it. But when you understand that it's not insignificant, it has the potential to feed family after family if it is cultivated properly. And so that little bit of compassion that we have for people works in the same way. It's so important that we have that compassion and that we do carry that compassion forward for the people that we don't believe deserve it. The ultimate thought form that we have to ascend is the thought form of separation. The thought form of separation is the idea that we're separate from our Creator and that we're separate from one another. The thought forms that want power over large swaths of population are based on the same thought form of separation as the original problem. What happens is that these thought forms start to take root and they grow horizontally. I'm at odds with this person over there because of these thoughts. I'm at odds with this person over there because of these thoughts. We have nothing in common. They're a different species than I am. Those kinds of things, right? That's all born from the desire to keep humanity busy fighting against itself so that it can be taken advantage of. The demiurge itself believes it can profit off of the division in humanity, when in reality, the demiurge doesn't really exist. So that's ultimate insanity. It's happening for no good reason, in other words. There is no good endpoint to the idea of separation. It's just pain for its own sake. It's all nonsense. It's all a lie. The idea that you and I are on a different team from them and them, because they're not as good as you are, or they're not on the right side of history, or whatever the story is, when that gets reinforced, recognize that's not coming from you. That's coming from the cultic thought form that you are under the spell of. And until you're willing to rise above that and say, no, I'm going to do the radical thing and have compassion for them anyway, it helps them awaken. Because it's probably true that you are a few steps ahead of them. That doesn't make you better. It just means that you've been walking longer than they have on this path. So help them catch up to you, right? You don't get anything special if you wake up sooner than they do. It just means that you get to stay here longer helping them. If you help them wake up with you, Not by giving them a new thought system to believe in, but just by showing them compassion. Just say, I'm here for you. I understand. You don't even have to say it verbally. Just feel it in your heart. Just know it. They'll get it. Then we understand, once we're not under the spell of that thought form anymore, we recognize, why are we fighting with each other? Because we were told to. And then you do have righteous fury at the thought form. You do have righteous fury at the thought form. And together, you can face that thought form as a unified people, as a unified child of God, no longer at odds with itself, but now rising up and facing the true evil, which doesn't even exist. That's the big joke, is this big, bad thought form doesn't even exist. Why? Because it's not the will of the infinite for it to exist. So it only exists within the realm of a nightmare to begin with. So waking up from this nightmare, you're going to recognize that all of your reasons for being in the nightmare no longer exist, and they never have. So all of this stuff that you're dumping as far as your grievances against these people, or the need to told you so them or rub their noses in their problem when they're trying to awaken, all of that you recognize is pointless. It's pointless. You're just another tool when you do that. You're just a tool, just like they were. If you really are a few steps ahead of people, good for you. Bring them up to your level. You don't have to coerce them. You don't have to teach them anything. Just in your mind, I've got you. We're in this together. Yeah, we may be on very opposite ends of certain issues. That's fine, but we're in this together. You're still my spiritual brother and sister. I don't need to agree with you to love you. So it's important to understand that as we ascend and overcome these thought forms, if we do it a little bit sooner than other people, that just gives us more need for compassion. It gives us more opportunity to be more helpful. If you get up in the morning and you remind yourself, my only reason for being here is to be helpful. And the only way I can be really helpful is to be guided by my inner wisdom, by that inner light within me, and not make decisions all by myself. Not to decide who somebody is or what they deserve or any of that, but to let my inner compassion show me how to do that. The vogue thing is to say, if they don't have accountability, then they're going to just keep taking advantage of you. Or what happens if they really were horrible with their behavior or really victimized you? You can't let them off the hook. All of that kind of stuff, it's nonsense. It's such a delay tactic. Don't even go down those roads. It's such a delay tactic. Of course, their behavior was horrible. They were under the influence of an evil, awful thought form. And you have been in your day too, maybe not to the same degree, but you haven't been perfect either. And so it's important that we understand that. Yeah, okay, if there's certain people that are a danger to you physically, don't hang out with them. But don't close your heart to them either. Don't close your heart to them either. Recognize the power you have to save us all so much time. But if you're doubling down on how you're not going to be compassionate to the ones who didn't get there as soon as you did, then you're part of the problem in delaying our awakening. And like I said, the vision I have, the things that I keep being shown are very different than what everybody else is telling me. I keep seeing that it's getting better and better. You have no clue how good it's going to be. That's what my guides tell me. Yeah, it looks scary in the moment, but don't buy it. But we have the opportunity and the ability and all the power to make that awakening happen very quickly. And it's based on how we are with others, especially the ones that we don't agree with. The idea that our disagreements on things are what separate us is the lie. Our disagreements about things don't matter. Our understanding and our recognition of our oneness matters. And if you're willing to reject one part of the holy child of God because you don't like what they stand for or whatever it is, and you're willing to reject them and say they don't belong as part of the child of God, then you are part of the delay. And it's really important to know that. So whether we want to be part of the delay or whether we want to be part of the solution is something that we have to ask ourselves moment to moment. And if we get up in the morning and remind ourselves what our function and our purpose here is, I'm here to help. And you ask that light within you. Please use all of my circumstances, use my powers, use my mind, use my words, use my position, use my whatever, in whatever way you need, so that we're there quicker. I'm there. I'm committed. I'm on it. You'll notice that you are guided and led each and every step of the way, and that there are people that you used to consider your enemies that you're willing to not see it that way anymore. There are disagreements, and that's as it should be. You don't have to agree with them. You don't have to let go of your understanding of how things should be, but you don't close your heart to them. You understand that they're waking up. They're asleep, and they're waking up, and they're waking up from a very scary nightmare. Thank you very much for spending some time with me today. I so appreciate you. Until next time, blessed be.